Okay, can you hear me on the net? Is the comm working? Yes, great. So welcome everybody to the second day of our NASA Community Workshop on the Global Exploration Roadmap. My name is Kathy Larini, and I am the current ISEG chair and the master of ceremonies of this two-day workshop. Today's the second day. We are going to be focusing in on topics of interest to the private sector and discussions that we've had within the ISEG that have bearing on the future of human space exploration and opportunities for the private sector, the commercial space opportunities. The agenda that we have today is we'll start out with a general presentation on describing the conversations that we've had within ISEG and with our international partners on the topic, and how that's led us to some messages that we're planning to put in the updated Global Exploration Roadmap. So I'd like your feedback on some of those messages, and we'll see. We'll talk about that. Then after a break, we're going to talk a little bit about ISRU. ISRU is something we've talked extensively about within the ISEG, and the idea is, we've talked about roles of government, roles of the private sector, what are the areas of interest, what kind of strategy can we think of internationally to advance the ISRU goals that we have, and what are the implications of those discussions. And then we'll round that out with a presentation on giving you some insight into discussions we've been having between agencies to coordinate the planned missions, robotic missions to the lunar poles. So there's a number of agencies that are planning missions to the lunar poles, and we're actively trying to look for coordination and collaboration opportunities to maximize the return from this collective set of missions towards closing strategic knowledge gaps associated with the lunar volatile. So we'll talk about that. And then at the end of the morning, we'll have an opportunity for any final thoughts, questions, comments. So I honestly don't think we're going to go the full time today, but we'll see how it goes, and we'll take what time is needed. Before I get into a summary, one other thing. For those of you that are joining for the first time, what we have is a system where if you've got questions, please enter them into the chat box in the Adobe Connect, and we've got somebody that's monitoring that and will feed the questions to me, and I will pose the question on your behalf to the speaker. So speakers, when you're finished, please be prepared for questions from people in the room and questions from people online. Any other general process? At the end of each presentation, we've got time built in for questions, for comments. So that's sort of the way we're going to work it. Let me invite Christina Gibbs to come up and give you those folks in the room a safety message.
Good morning. We're happy to have you all here again. New building, new safety briefing. So if we need to leave this building, we ask you can go out these doors, the ones back here, and we go kind of out into the parking lot should there be any emergencies today. Otherwise, we're happy to have you all here. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. One other programming note, the presentations will be made available online after the workshop, and you'll receive a link to where they are, and any questions that we don't get to during the time today, we will answer online afterwards as well. So with that, let us talk about yesterday, right? We have on the agenda to start out with observations from day one. And so I'm going to briefly, for those of you that participated and those of you that didn't, summarize summarize the discussion from yesterday and takeaways that I have for our continued discussion with the international partners leading up to the finalization of the GER. GER3. So we heard from Mark Geyer. It was just a general overview of NASA's exploration plans. You heard how the path that NASA is on with SLS and Orion and the Gateway concept studies that we're doing are well aligned with the Global Exploration Roadmap and partner interest in getting started with missions beyond LEO, a common roadmap that we're working. You heard that we're waiting to hear back from the administration on specifics of our plans, and once we hear back, we'll certainly react accordingly. We got into the ISEG mission scenario. We talked about low Earth orbit. Robin Gatens gave a nice presentation on low Earth orbit, and she discussed she shared with you the fact that all agencies participating in this discussion in ISEG believe that low Earth orbit will remain an important sphere of influence, an important destination for humans, whether it's astronaut flights, research, technology demonstration, that low Earth orbit will remain important for agencies out into the future. And so we have been talking about how to use the GER to send messages that governments will maintain a demand for LEO. Governments are very, with the ISS and the Chinese space station, you have opportunities for doing research in low Earth orbit, and the ISS partners are very interested in managing a smooth transition from ISS to a post-ISS platform for any users of LEO, so that people who are planning research and activities in low Earth orbit can be assured that there will be capabilities available. So I think that was well received, and we will proceed on with those messages in the Global Exploration Roadmap. We talked about the lunar vicinity and its strategic location for preparing for deep space exploration, how it's a region in the deep space environment, and how the Deep Space Gateway fits into the overall plan. You heard from John Guidi a bit about the concept studies that NASA is doing, and the discussions we've had with the international partners and domestic partners on concept studies associated with the Gateway. We talked a little bit about why we believe that the Gateway was an important pathway to the lunar surface, should those missions become more important, and we talked about why it fits in a more sustainable, let's say, exploration architecture that recognizes when we go to the moon, it's not to stay forever and lose track of our goal of going to Mars, but use those investments to prepare for follow-on missions after the moon. So the Gateway. We talked about Gateway uses, right? So we got some good ideas for additional uses for the Gateway. So we'll talk to our international partners about that and try to increase the Gateway use case that we've got in the Global Exploration Roadmap. So some additional good ideas, innovative ideas were offered, and we'll add those to the discussion with partners and include that in the updated Global Exploration Roadmap. We talked about the lunar surface missions. Ryan Whitley gave a nice presentation of what we've been working on within ISEG about how the Gateway enables humans to the lunar surface, and the architecture that we've been pursuing in order to have a reference to guide investments and guide capability studies and investments of international partners that are interested in getting to the surface of the moon. I think that the presentation was well received, and Ryan did a great job of communicating to you what you're going to see in the updated GER and why it looks the way that it does. Then we heard from Michelle Rucker about how the Deep Space Gateway enables missions to Mars, and we talked a little bit about the importance of making sure that all the investments we make as we go beyond low Earth orbit are always focused in on Mars as the horizon goal, because it remains very important to all the agencies that are participating in ISEG. And lastly, I summarized the bigger picture of changes that you will see within the global exploration roadmap at a very, very high level, just so you know what's coming, and so people will be prepared when you see the document in January. We talked a little bit about the importance of the document in informing the International Space Exploration Forum that's going to take place in Tokyo the first weekend in March, and how the industry, the ISEF meeting is called, International Space Exploration Forum, the ISEF, which is a government political dialogue on space exploration. We talked a little bit about the industry ISEF meeting that's scheduled the day before, and the relationship of this industry ISEF to the government level ISEF meeting the following day. So that's a rough summary of how the discussions went yesterday. I feel like we got a lot of good ideas and support for the path that we're on, the roadmap that we're pursuing, and I thank everybody for their comments and their engagement in the discussion yesterday. So with that, I propose we start the agenda for today. So could you put up the first presentation, please, Ricky?